the sound.
Maude Hirst, Maude Hirst, Maude Hirst.
Awesome. All right. Would the Canadian pronunciation of your name be, did people say Maude?
They do.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, should I say it like you or should I say it like how I say it?
It's funny because one of my best friends is American, and she, when we grew up together in London, she used to call me Maude. She was like, "Hey, Maude." And then when she got older, she was like, "That's not how the Americans say it." Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. All right, let's get started. What's up and welcome back to the Sam Skelly Show. I'm so grateful to have Maude Hirst with us today. Hello, love.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I love how I just said hello, love, like you would say it.
You did, very English. Love it.
When I lived there for 3 years, and when I came home, because when I lived there, all of my friends were British. Where I worked, they were all British. My partner at the time was British. So I don't know, when it comes to accents, I'm so adaptable with accents. Like I just start talking British. My mom would be like, who is this?
By the end of this show, you will just be Brits speaking to each other.
I love it. I love it. It's so good. If I could choose any accent, it would be the British accent. Like,
Really?
yeah, you know, like some people like favor the Australian accent. You know, I'm not like the biggest fan of that one, but the British, there's like something like no matter what you say, it sounds like classy. Unless you're from the parts of England where, what are they called? I don't want to say anything rude, but what are they called?
I do. I was like, there's quite a few, but we maybe won't say it in case they're listening. There's a few unfortunate English accents for sure, though.
Yeah, my partner was from Gloucestershire, so that was very proper and British. It was very sweet. All right. Well, today on the show, we are going to dive into all things meditation, yoga, mindfulness, embodiment, which is your realm of everything. But you started as an actress.
I
So
did.
I'm curious to know the transition from that world into this, because it is vastly different.
Totally. And I think that's exactly the reason I kind of wanted a big change. But so, yeah, I worked as an actress for 10 years, trained, and was in a big TV show called Vikings for 5 years. And it was an amazing experience. But I feel like there was always a calling that I hadn't yet really hit on. Even when I was acting, I always felt like I was hiding behind screens and characters, and I'd never felt that I was like authentically showing up as me. And at the end of the show, I was in a place where I thought I should have been really, really happy. And I'd got the job that I'd always wanted to get, and I had a partner at the time, and I just bought a house, and everything seemed great. And all of a sudden, I finished the show, and about a year later, me and my partner broke up, and a really like horrible breakup. And the kind of many people go through these stories, but I suddenly found I was in a moment where I could look at myself in a different way and think, hang on, I haven't really stopped from my busy life for so long to ask, who am I at this point in my life, heading into my 30s? What do I want? What makes me happy? And all of those big life questions that I suddenly had this opportunity to really kind of look at again. Did the cliche breakup yoga retreat.
The cliche breakup. That is so good. I love it. I love it.
But then on that yoga retreat, so much changed. And I met the woman who was running it, who was very able to be really confident and vulnerable in a way that I'd never really experienced before. Because I think in the acting world, there's a lot of false confidence and a lot of ego and a lot of people trying to have their stuff together all the time. And I was finding for myself personally, I was that person. I wasn't okay, but on the surface, I was always fine. And I was always the person that would show up. And when I needed to put a smile on my face, I could have the smile on my face. And I suddenly was like, what? This is fascinating that you can live this life, which is much more kind of deep and vulnerable, and also feel confident. And I suddenly was like, I want to know more about this. So decided to go to the person that she had trained with for yoga, just to do a training for myself, not really to teach. I think the story, so many of us do that, right? And I get that yoga training changed my life. It was mainly transformation. It was mainly looking at all the questions I was asking, which is, who am I? What do I want? And taking that mask off and having to stand in front of a room of people as Maude. And I'd never done that. Like, it would always been as, for the last 5 years, Helga, but before that, different characters and different versions of me, because I'd been trained to perform, really. And so, yeah, that was kind of my a transitional period from acting into this work, and it's a constant journey and developing more and more. And from yoga, really heavily felt like meditation became my calling. I trained in both, but then suddenly felt like every time I was in meditation or guiding meditation, there was just something that was telling me this is what you need to be doing. So I've kind of continued to weave lots of different things and bring where I am in kind of the world, I think.
I love this so much. So many people struggle with that transition of going from the narrative of this is what I do. You know, in your case, I'm an actress, I'm in these films, I show up like this is how people know me as. And now I'm going to make like the pivot, the shift into truly finding out who I am when there's no cameras, when there's no scripts, when there's no production. And for people listening, if you're not an actress and maybe you work in a corporate world, going from that corporate structure, living in the shoulds, I should go to school, I should get this high paying job, and then moving into deeper spiritual development work, that can be really untethering and scary for people, because oftentimes people will say, well, what if I don't like what I find? What if I don't actually like who I am? I'm curious to know, in that transition, did you ever come against any of those fears of like, well, what if I uncover something that's true about myself that I'm struggling to accept?
Yes, absolutely. The journey has been an up and down whirlwind of many things, but the deeper, I guess, I've been into my journey, it's that I'm learning to even love those parts of me. And I used to, I think, I'd be scared of all parts of me that the parts of your life that you might feel ashamed of, that you've pushed away to one side and you never wanted to look at again. And actually realizing that just, all of those parts were me trying to do my best at different points in my life and not always making the right decision. And I was definitely confronted with things that I didn't want to see, but also in that made me realize who I was to a deeper level. So I started like rebalancing the judgment of myself to a kind of another reason to accept myself more, and also kept finding it intriguing that it was just learning myself more. It was parts of me that even if I didn't necessarily like them, I never really even knew it existed because I'd pushed it away so much. So it was like, okay, I have to see the good, because the bad, because if I don't accept the bad, I'm not going to accept the good. And another thing you said that I think is really important and something I work with a lot, we define ourselves so much in the Western world through what we do. And the first question we ask each other is like, oh, what do you do? Not who are you? A lot of the time it's like, oh, I'm Maude, I'm an actress, or, I'm an accountant, or whatever it is that you do. And I really strongly feel like we should start trying to transition into taking the definition of us away from the jobs and being the person that we are, that does many things, and taking that like idea that, yeah, we have to define ourselves because we're complex beings, that we're all of these different things. And I want to be Maude, who can act and do meditation and can travel the world and can be at home at the same time. Like I want to be a person with lots of different strings to my bow.
Yeah.
Other people
How did you deal with the releasing of the identity that you held for so long? Like, would you say now you still identify as an actress?
I struggled with that, actually. That was one of my struggles, because with acting, and I'm sure it's the same actually with any career, but it's I was almost told in my training that if you think that you do anything else and you define yourself as anything else, you're not an actress anymore. It was like almost like you have to be fully in. And you hear people say, how do you deal with the struggle? It's like, well, I had no other choice. I was just an actor, and I would never do anything else. And so it did take me a little bit of time to redefine or what it was that who I was. And so now I would say, no, I don't define myself as an actor. I define myself as Maude, who still loves acting and still acts. So I think it's a very, and in the same way I wouldn't say that I define myself as a yogi or a mindfulness guide. I am that, and I do that, and I love that, but I'm also just more doing and trying and evolving, hopefully daily. and not kind of having to hold on to that anymore.
Identification is such a sticky one because we tend to put these identities on ourselves for safety. It's really like, I am clinging to this thing because it makes me feel safe and there's certainty. Like, I fit in this box and this is what I do. And so I love this spaciousness that you're naming right now of this like fluidity of the self, to say, this is who I am. This beingness is my essence. It's not attached to anything outside of myself or an accolade or a title or any sort of niche, but it's just who I am. And these are the things that I do. And I love that we're talking about that, because I think that piece for many people can be it can feel a little untethering. Like, okay, well, if I'm not, this thing that people validate in society, then what am I really? And that is the place of just pure acceptance of like, my beingness and my presence is enough. I don't have to identify and say I'm any of these other titles or things. Just showing up is my gift.
Yeah. And it's terrifying. As you said, it isn't easy. It's not like I suddenly woke up one day and I was like, oh, resolved, I've got it.
Yeah.
But when you do decide it, and when you experience it as a truth that actually, like, we think other people are expecting it, our identity to be one thing, but actually when you redefine yourself and you own it, no one expects anything of you. And it's so liberating. And then suddenly, like, a realm of possibilities open up, because if you tell people I'm a person that does loads of things, you can do loads of things. Like, all of a sudden the expectation changes, not just from yourself but from the external world, because you've taken that kind of heavy weight off your shoulder that was like, oh, I thought the world needed me to be this, but actually it was me needing me to be that for myself. And then it was like liberation.
It's crazy how much we can project our own pressure and limitations towards ourselves onto other people. Like, oh, people expect me to be this, or my audience expects me to be this certain way. And I'm like, no, maybe it's just me. And I'm like projecting it onto them. So it's interesting to like dismantle all of those narratives and really understand, like, where is the pressure actually coming from? And what would it look like for us to liberate a little bit of that pressure day by day, moment by moment?
It's a journey. And it's exactly that, right? It's moment by moment. Who do you want to be today? And not to feel this pressure that we have to know, and to not think that if you make a decision, it's irreversible. Like, if I suddenly decide tomorrow, you know what, I really miss acting and I think I do miss being that identity for a minute, that's okay too. It's like, I just think it's the pressure that we, as I said before, it's like we think the outside world has this like vision of what we should be, or maybe our family has this vision of what we should be. And I think it's just about giving yourself permission to choose what you want to be and give the space for that to be evolving. And the other thing that I notice is, growing up at different ages, we should surely keep redefining ourselves, but we tend to not. Like, I think that like pivotal late teens, early 20s, we often make a decision, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. And you feel there's this resistance that if you change that, you failed in some way. And then actually, like, as a 30-year-old woman, as a 32-year-old woman, I want something very different than I wanted when I was 20. And so to kind of have the space to redefine it, I'm like, oh, I can breathe in this space.
Oh goodness, this is good. This is the good life. One of my favorite mantras is, I reserve the right to change my mind. Because living, how can I say this? Like, living with fluidity and knowing that we are human beings that are constantly evolving and growing and constantly shedding and becoming more of who we are. It's like our view on life, our view on everything is going to change. So how can I adapt this like fluid sense of self? I'm anchored in who I am, but there's a fluidity in the things I'm interested in and the things that I believe. And when I know more, then I shift my beliefs, and having that, releasing the rigidity on that and just allowing it to just be spacious has been such a game changer for me personally.
Yeah, I love that. And just fluidity in everything. In fact, that's just one of my favorite words. I just think like everything is much more fluid than we ever thought before. And whether that's actually like in movement and the natural rhythm of what a body does, and there is this like fluid motion, but in the way that we see things, in the way that we show up, and in relationships to everything and everyone. It's like, if we just allow the idea of fluidity, again, it's that sense of liberation that we can, things are adaptable and they can change and they don't have to stay fixed. And that again can scare some people, because the idea that there is no solid structure, and some people really need that sense of structure and control. But I mean, I guess it's that daily softening and getting into a more kind of fluid approach that makes it easier.
Liberation is one of my favorite words. And through practices, of course, meditation is such a pathway. And it's funny, actually, I'll share this story quick before we go into liberation and meditation. But I can remember, so I struggled with an eating disorder from 18 to 23. And I was also in film, but I was on the stunts. Like I did stunts. I was a stunt double. So I was never like really talking in front of the camera, but I was like doing moves. And I struggled with body image, eating disorders, the whole thing for a long time. And one of the ways people would say, like, when I was seeking help, I did therapy and talk therapy and all sorts of things. And people were like, you should meditate. And I couldn't meditate. Like, I would sit down to meditate and my brain was so busy and so intense. And I felt almost like unsafe in my body. Like I didn't have the emotional capacity to feel my emotionality at that time. So it would feel literally uncomfortable for me. So it's interesting because I hated meditation in my early 20s. I love it now. And the reason I love it now is because my pathway into meditation was through breath work. So allowing myself to start with breath work, which sort of like released the fear so that I could get into my body. So I'm curious to know, was that your experience, or did you just love meditation from day one?
I was always fascinated with meditation, but it certainly was not easy. And I think it definitely is. I mean, it's called a practice for a reason, right? It's like the more you do it, the more you get it, because the mind never stops. I actually, when I first started, I'm skipping forward a bit, but I guess at the beginning of my journey, I definitely used yoga as my way into meditation. And I trained in power yoga in not an overly heated room, but in a slightly heated room. And it's similarly to using breath, because you do use breath throughout yoga, but you get so in your body that then you sit to meditate and you just drop straight in, because the mind chatter stopped. So for me, it was, again, using the kind of physical to get into the body, and then the mind could calm. But then I got fascinated, because I come from a very academic family where they are not spiritual. They don't really believe in that stuff, and science is their religion, really. And I thought, how do I merge these two beliefs where, spirituality was never part of my understanding of life, but I was experiencing things. So I started working with some neuroscientists, because I was like, I'd love to be able to breach that gap in conversation with people, saying, I'm having this experience. This is what the scientific thing is happening in my brain. And then through that understanding, it really helped me, because the mind doesn't stop. And so what happens is that different pathways of the brain get triggered. So there's 3 pathways that get triggered, and it's the concentration part, and then your mind wanders, because it's a thinking machine, it inevitably does. And how quickly can you bring it back into to realizing the mind's wandered, and bring it back into this concentration. And in that like circle motion of awareness, you're meditating. And it liberated again so much for me, and made meditation seem easier, because it was suddenly like, oh, you don't have to be in a quiet mind, you have to just be aware of the thoughts and be able to shift back out of it.
That I wish you taught me meditation back 10 years ago. Because I would sit down, I'm like, but I hate this, I'm trying to think about not thinking and it's not working. And I find now, do you ever do breath work? Is that something that you love?
I absolutely love it. It was one of my pathways in as well. And I don't know if it was before I did even my yoga training. I did a few, I would come to LA a lot, and I did lots of breathwork sessions there, and were having wild experiences, and was like, what is this? I came to lie in a room and breathe for a while, and I was kind of having out of body experiences, just really profound experiences that I didn't know what was happening at the time, because I had kind of no context for it. But I knew I felt wonderful afterwards. So I was like, whatever this is. And interestingly, it always calls me back. So I've started really introducing it in my work as well, and working with a lot of breathwork teachers in order to kind of incorporate it. And if I do morning meditations with my groups, and if I do longer meditations, I generally always I lead in through breathwork.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful to help unhook the mind and just like give the mind that spaciousness to be in the body.
Mm.
And so interesting, these pathways into our inner world, which are so magnificent and so profound and hold such a deep intelligence. Like our inner world is holding such a deep intelligence, and we are our own drug, through meditation. It's like we're medicating ourselves through our own energy. Like it's wild.
It is. I know. And we're so powerful and so incredibly wise in it. Yeah, internally. It's
Mm.
part of my whole work, my personal work has been through this stuff, was never believing in my own gut instinct. And
Mm.
never, I was so, because I came from an academic background, and I wasn't academic, but my family were, and
Mhm.
I just had this, like, I trusted everyone else's opinion more than that gut. And I
Yeah.
always thought, I'm not clever enough in the traditional sense. And I didn't go to university, I went to drama school, and I was always feeling like I could never, I
Mm.
wasn't going to be this wise woman, and I was desperate to be. And then I found this connection to this inner, I don't know what it is, wisdom, and this inner part of me. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden I became wise, and not wise in like book smart, but wise in just that I can guide people through their personal development, because I'd listened to this inner voice that is powerful. And
Yes.
it was like a huge revelation to me that this isn't intellect, this is a
Yeah.
brain, this is a part of you that can be expanded
Mm.
and grown. And academic work is incredibly inspiring, and brains are amazing, but we have another huge wisdom in our gut that is like, I don't know, just an even more wise. It's like with the whole centuries of humans before us resonate in that place.
Yes. Do you believe in past lives?
Yes and no. I kind of believe in
Yeah.
everything these days, if I'm honest. I think we all
Mm.
experience. I've experienced things with past lives. I'm
Mm.
trained as an energy healer, and part of my training was tapping into that. And I certainly have experienced things and feel a wisdom from something that is beyond my
Mm.
32 years of life. Like there's
Mhm.
something there that is more than I can know on a kind of mental level. But um, I don't know. I don't know how much of it is a
Mm.
human needing more understanding, and how much I really truly believe. But all I know is the experiences I've had have tapped into something that felt like it
Yeah.
could be true.
So I'm with you on that. When I study past lives, I'm like, oh, that's cool if it's true, but it's also fine if it's not. And so it's interesting. And I'm curious to know if you resonate with this, but when I first started teaching breath work, my intuition was like, you've done this before. Like, this is not your first rodeo, girlfriend. Like, you have done this before. And so, and clearly in this life, I had not. So it's so fascinating to know that our desires hold such intelligence. And if those desires are holding the intelligence because it's something we've done in a past life or whatever it is, I'm like, man, what would life truly look like if we prioritized and valued intuition over critical thinking? Like, if we just shifted that, because right now it's kind of like, we kind of feel like this gut thing of like, go do that thing. And then the mind's like, like kind of
Mm-mm.
like hijacks it sometimes. Like, what if we only led through the intuition and we just observed the thoughts of the mind around limitation or fear, but it didn't stop us, it didn't hijack our experience. Like, how different would life be?
Yeah. Well, it's that. I
Mm.
mean, this is the aim, right? This is what I strive for every day still,
Yeah.
even with all the work I've done, is that I know the guts there. And every time I
Mm.
feel it, and I'd say I'm getting better, and I'm probably 60% gut now, 40% mind. But
Nice.
I
I
still,
love
I
it.
still find myself and in moments where I'm like, I know this
Mm.
isn't right, but why am I still doing it? And why am I still here? And why am I
Mhm.
still questioning this thing that, I've got like this flashing light inside of me saying like, don't do it. Or the other way around saying,
Yeah.
definitely do it. And
Yeah.
more for me, it's that now. It's like there's this
Mm.
gut that says, go do this thing that's maybe a bit scary for the mind. And the mind goes, nope, don't think you should do it. And so it's like,
Mhm.
it's the mind now that limits me from always
Yeah.
following that intuition.
Yeah, and the mind's just trying to keep us safe. The mind's just like, you might die if you go date that boy. So you probably should sabotage it now, right? It's like,
Yeah. A lovely mind. I mean, it's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. It's a very intelligent, incredible machine, but it's not the thing to be guided by, I don't feel anymore.
Mm-hmm. I've been studying a lot of Joe Dispenza's work. And, it's like that amalgamation that you're speaking to of this like scientific approach to approach to sort of woo woo things. And I think the culture, I haven't lived in the UK for like 10 years, but when I was there, I mean, you talk to, like in my group of friends anyway, you would say energy or you would say personal development, and they're just like very like, no, 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 no. If you can't see it, it's not real. Is it still like that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's a huge shift generally globally at the moment for obvious reasons, but
Yes.
which has been a kind of a beautiful unraveling of even the most skeptical of people in my life have suddenly tuned
Mm,
into a curiosity about meditation and mindfulness, and not through the spiritual route, but just knowing that it's good for the mind. What
yeah.
could this possibly do? Which
Yeah.
has been a fascinating part of the last few months for me. But certainly Brits are definitely like, give me the scientific proof and I'll believe you. If not,
Yeah.
no, you're crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a thing.
I live in a little pocket of San Diego where have you been to San Diego before?
But I actually was speaking to somebody about it yesterday, and they were saying it's their favorite place.
It's amazing. It is seriously like, I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and I love Vancouver so much, but there's a magic. You got to come next time you're in LA. Got to come down here. There's a magic here, and spirituality is just the culture. You go to your local coffee shop and people are talking about chakras and aliens. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is wild.
I want to
So
come to that place.
yeah, please come hang. But it's beautiful. And you're right. This year the rug got, or last year, I guess, and maybe this year too, the rug's been like whoop, ripped out of people's sorry, that's the train that sometimes interrupts the podcast. We can just edit that part out. The rug has been ripped. And so people are feeling untethered. They're looking for practices. And so it's cool to normalize the fact that the benefits and the science of meditation is real. Like you can shift your brain through these practices, breath work, whatever it is. And for those of you listening, if meditations, well, actually, let me ask you, how can we, for people who are like, I can't meditate, I don't want to meditate, what is like a starting point? Like, what's the low hanging fruit for my I can't meditators? Because I know we've got lots that listen to the show.
Yeah, be like, start small. So don't feel like, the end result. Don't aim for this like end result of I need to be able to sit for an hour in silence. 10 minutes, they've now proven scientifically, is a really good place to start. If you can get to 10 minutes of just sitting, and you don't take away the word meditation is another thing I say to people, and just do like 10 minutes relaxation or 10 minutes concentrating on my breath.
Yeah.
Just and it's we feel again we're such a goal-led society, so take away this idea that like I have to achieve something or get somewhere, and realize that really meditation is just shifting your awareness away from the external world into your internal world. And concentrating on breath is a great place to start. Breathing in and out for 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out for 10 minutes, your whole body, your nervous system calms, and that is meditation. It's like just break it into little nuggets. Love the word nugget.
Little bite-sized chicken nuggets.
Yeah. And get rid of the illusion that you have to quieten the mind, because that stops people starting. It really, like that was my kind of, I'm never going to be able to stop the thoughts. They're always there. It's like, well, yeah, the brain is a thinking machine. It thinks. So you don't have to stop the mind. You have to go back to that idea that this is a circle motion. Your mind's going to wander, catch it wandering, bring it back to the breath. And that motion is your meditation.
What's your process for dealing with the inner critic during meditation or during just life in general, shifting it into the place of compassion?
Feeling it and hearing it properly. I think like for me, it used to be that I would hear, well, I used to not know it was there. I just used to believe my inner critic was reality at first. And then the more aware I got of this kind of inner critic, which for me is, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, were my three main lovely internal voices.
So nice. So
so
nice.
lovely, yeah. And for me, it was then I noticed it was there, and when I saw it, I would try and resist it and pretend like it wasn't there, or I would kind of pretend to outsmart myself and be like, well, I know this isn't true, so let's just not listen. And now I've got to a point where I see it, I hear it, and I'm like, actually, let me just actually listen into what this is actually do. Like, why am I saying this? What am I really feeling under this? And I kind of become curious and accept that it's there as a thing, and then it tends to go quicker, because I'm like, okay, and disconnecting to it, not believing it, and realizing this is a thought, this isn't reality. And that's kind of been my process.
One of my favorite quotes is, don't fill the void, feel the void. And that's what you're speaking to right now. It's so good. Like, how can we just feel the felt sense of emptiness? Because we all have it. If you're human, you've got it. You have those thoughts of unworthiness and whatever it is. It's a part of the human experience and so rooted in survival. So how can we really begin to listen to those thoughts, not believe them, but listen to them and just feel them?
Yeah, totally. I did a Vipassana 10-day silent meditation.
Oh my God, you did?
Yeah, in December last year. Well, just before lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's so 10 hours a day of meditation and 10 days of silence. And I went because I was still asking myself that question, who am I, when there's no other voices around, and that depth of like, there is literally no other voices, and you don't even have your own external voice to rationalize things. Like, where do you go in that space of depth? And what you were just saying, and the Vipassana meditation is all about body scanning and listening to and feeling to the physical sensations of the body. And all of the thoughts are sensations. It all kind of merges after a while, and you just realize that, again, the body's intelligence is so amazing, and all of those negative thoughts are generally connected to a sensation in the body, and you can, the more you connect to your physical body, that's how things really truly release. And yeah, again, we know that you really connect to that idea of embodiment as well, but for me, feeling the body and feeling the sensations and breaking everything, whether it's a thought or an emotion, down into sensations in the body is the most powerful way to shift things and to heal things.
Is it true you can only eat like plain rice at that meditation retreat?
It's not a joyful, to be honest, actually, the one that I did, it's known as one of the kind of kindest of the retreats.
Okay.
Food was
Yeah.
actually, it was beautiful. Really, everything's very plain, and you have nothing, you can't read, you can't write, there's literally no distractions other than your own mind. And I think the food is kind of beige on purpose.
Yeah.
Just keeping you in that space of like, I'm not stimulated by anything. There is no kind of escaping this, and you do start wanting to hug trees and talk to the ants.
You can't write anything down?
No, which for me is a huge thing, because that's a lot of my processing is like, I feel it, I want to write it. And
Yeah, same. Oh my God. I think I'd go crazy with that. I'd like start writing on my hand with my nail. Wow. That's insane. It's definitely something I'm called to, and also something I'm terrified of, because I really like talking.
Yes, I am the same as that. I've always been a talker and a connecting with other people and sharing experiences. If I have a mind-blowing experience, the first thing I want to do is like, hey guys,
Yeah, let me tell you all about it.
Yeah. I mean, what Vipassana teaches you is just, that the worst you could ever feel happens, and then it will pass. And you don't need to share it. You don't have to do anything. It will just pass by itself. The best thing that ever happens to you happens there, and then it passes. And it's almost like that. Don't crave the good, don't crave the bad. Don't feel that there's one thing you need to do to be able to process or cope with anything. It's like in that place, no. And I mean, that's what I left with. It's like, it will always change, and this too shall pass. Is that like, I didn't get the tattoo, but I wanted to get it tattooed on my forehead when I left. Like, whatever you're feeling will pass, and you feel a bit like a superhero when you leave, because you realize everything does shift, everything passes, and nothing feels in life like you couldn't cope with it, because that feeling will also pass.
My friend has a tattoo, which is ironic, but it's a tattoo that says everything is temporary. I'm like, except for that tattoo, that's not going. That is going to stay. But it's so true. It's such a metaphor for life. And the more that we cling and label things and give energy to them, it's like the drama doesn't come from the thing. The drama comes from our associations to the thing.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Would you do it again?
I told myself on the last day, never do this again. Whatever happens, whoever convinces you, whatever you remember, and you look back at things with rose-tinted glasses. And I was like, no matter where you get to in your life, you're not doing this again. You got through it. You survived it. Now, never. And now, a year and a bit in, I recognize how beneficial it was. And I feel like maybe at some point, definitely not in a rush to go back, but at some point in my life, I think it might be helpful, because although the 10 days when you're there feel about a million years, it is 10 days, and you can have really, profound shifts. And for me, one of the biggest realizations was this question that used to come up for me a lot with, who am I? When I was in that stage of 10 days in the last few meditations, it was just like my internal space was just laughing at me, saying, like, stop trying to find out who you are. You're constantly evolving. You're a changing being. There is no thing to cling to here. Like, you are not the same person you were an hour ago. You're not going to be the same person you were now in an hour. Let go of this idea of definitions again, and that idea that, like, you need to be this fixed thing, and allow yourself to be this beautiful, evolving thing. And it liberated, like, that question hasn't come up for me since, because it's like every day I remind myself of that feeling that was just like in a giggle of just being like the naivety that I felt I needed to be something. And that if I found out who I was, I would then be happy, or I'd then feel I'd understood. And it was just like, you're never going to understand. You're constantly changing. So get over it. I was like, okay.
I love that so much. It's so cool to like really laugh at our little parts, like the little parts that are like, you have to be important and you have to be significant and you have to do something that matters in life. It's like such a cosmic joke, And like when we really zoom out and think of it, it's like, wow, actually, my only goal here is to be and to give and to love and to serve, and that's it. And whatever happens along that way is cool. And we can have desires and we can have things, but there's that quote, like, you make your plans and God laughs, or whatever. It's like the grand unfolding is so different than what we can possibly conceptualize.
Yeah.
Dang, I love it. So speaking of desires and visions, even though God has a plan, universe has a plan, whatever you associate with, what is a vision and an intention that you want to call in this year?
Presence. I've been reading a lot of Eckhart Tolle over the last, through lockdown, all of them, which has been a lifesaver, because all we have is now, and in the now, everything is bearable. And I think just for like my personal journey, I want to call forth like that. How can I keep practicing being as present as possible, and not needing to know the future and all of that stuff. And I think career-wise and kind of my path-wise, I'm feeling my whole aim is how to make mindfulness accessible to everybody. And that means, for those that are non-believers in any kind of spiritual, how do I make a practice that is not spiritual for them to just get the benefits of meditation or whatever it is? So finding different ways to make this work accessible to as many people as I can possibly reach is my
I love that.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. This year, so because breathwork has changed my life so much, my biggest vision and mission is to basically mainstream breathwork. It's not like meditation's like the cool kid at school, everyone's like, meditation like popped and now it's mainstream, and like, everyone knows what meditation is, but breathwork hasn't had that yet. And so my vision, I mean, it's obviously old school, right? It's like we've been doing it forever. The Tibetan Buddhists have been doing it forever, but America, in the middle of America, or even where I'm from, Canada, it's like breath work. Like, what is that? And so my vision this year is to just mainstream breath work in all the ways that we're doing through our technology and through our facilitator training, and just getting the word out there.
Amazing. Yes, everyone needs it. It actually, bizarrely, in the UK, breathwork is the kind of new buzzword. It's become, I think, because it is, when you've experienced it, that easy, not easy, but it's a really powerful route into meditation or into kind of internal peace. It can now be the kind of easy thing for people to talk about, because they're like, have this experience of 10 minutes of breathing, you will feel something.
Yeah. It's like instant. There's like so for people who are impatient, it's like a real good one.
Totally. Yeah.
And then rooting. I just moved into this new house with my partner, and I like spent 3 hours last night buying furniture, which is something I'm 31 years old. I've never furnished my own house. So there's that. So I'm excited to just like root and just be and play in my garden and swim in the ocean and just, yeah. So kind of echoing what you shared of just like being so present to what is and not in a rush to go and hurry and push and just really soak it in.
Yeah. And snap, by the way, I've just literally moved into my new place and furniture shopping
Yeah.
and all the things. Yeah. Feeling
Oh
like
my gosh.
grounding finally. And I've been traveling for years, and this year's made me just be like, okay, it's good to have a base.
Yes.
Let's be here and let's ground down, and then we can fly from here.
Totally. Yeah. It's nice to have that ground to fly from. Last night, Eric and I were talking about furniture and air fryers. And I turned to him, I'm like, are we old now? Like, is this it? So good.
Yep. Yep. I think we
So
are.
you have some amazing things on the go. You have a meditation app, you have a membership site. Can you share with everyone all the cool projects that you're working on and where we can find you?
Yeah, so I've just released my meditation app that I'm so excited about. It's been
Mm,
like an ongoing thing for a while that's suddenly kind of birthed into the world. It's called Energy Rise on the App
mm,
Store. And it's 10-minute meditations around loads of different topics. And the idea is there's meditation for your every mood. And so with every mood, there's 2 10-minute meditations. And then I've written an article about further diving into that topic. So it might be love,
mm.
relationships, it might be anxiety, stress, or sleep. And so whatever you're feeling, whatever you need support with, you can kind of go, you read the article and you can practice the meditations.
Awesome.
So that's amazing. And then I've got a members club for the mind, which is an ongoing membership. It's 4 live sessions a week of healing, yoga, movement, meditation, and finding again what resonates with you individually. So kind of finding your own individual path into mindfulness. And you can find all of that information on my website, which is energyrise.co.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to connect with you.
You too. I know. I feel there's lots of similarities and vibration.
Totally.
It feels like
It feels tickly and prickly. That's like that, those sensations. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so, so much. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode, and we'll catch you next week. Bye for now.